That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
I will say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football, the only NFL show that gives you everything you need to know about the NFL for that day in just 30 minutes. I am your host, Brian McFadden. It's Wednesday, October 12th, which means it is Power Rankings Day. We are done with Week 5, heading into Week 6. Jimmy, as always, we're not going to have any disagreements. We're going to be aligned. The fans are going to be aligned. Everybody's just going to be hunky-dory at the end of this, right?
Right, yeah. I'm just happy I have something to do on Tuesday and Wednesday when there's no football on.
Like I said, at the end of the day, that's why we do this. We just need to fill the gaps for our own football junkiness. So we do Power Rankings show.
Yeah.
If you guys are tuning into this for the first time, what we do is we do it draft style. So it is a little bit different. Jimmy has his rankings. I have my rankings. And then we take turns from 32 to 1, picking the teams for each slot. So at the end of the day, we might have slightly different rankings personally than the rankings that we come out with. But hey, we stand by our collective rankings. We will put them out on Twitter afterwards. Shout out to GoldDeck16, who always does a great job with our graphic. Without further ado, Jimmy, are you ready to jump into this thing?
32 teams in 30 minutes. Let's do it.
Who had? I think I had 32 last week, correct? And you had one? Or no, you had one. You had odds.
I had 32.
Okay, so I will start it off. Let's go ahead and jump in. 30 minutes of football with Legit Football. Power Rankings draft starts now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. This very funky tier maker, which is, hey, once again, all we have to work with, but it actually works fairly well for this segment. I tried to clean up the colors a little bit. I will go ahead and kick it off. This is a very easy one. I will say before we really get into it, there are, I think, 11 teams at 2 and 3, so I really had trouble with kind of the middle section of this, but this one was no trouble at all. They're the first team to fire their head coach in 2022, and it's no surprise, the Carolina Panthers. A single victory, which they eked out with defensive football over the Saints, completely dominated by the San Francisco 49ers. Their coaching staff is gone. They have an interim head coach, Steve Wilkes, who did have 1 year of head coaching experience in Arizona, was gone after a year. Baker Mayfield, who has been horrible, is injured. We're looking at P.J. Walker. Is there anything to get excited about for Carolina right
now? New coaching. I think it's the biggest thing. Is new blood's going to be in. Yeah, it's going to be in, and full tank mode is a possibility. There's a lot of rumors going around with McCaffrey going elsewhere, Robbie Anderson going elsewhere. Them just doing quick fire sale. I don't know if they'll do that just yet, but at this point, I mean, we've talked for the past few weeks about him getting fired. It was only a matter of time that would happen. And if you get fired after Week 5, you know things are down bad.
Yeah, this is, like I said, no surprise. So let's not spend any more time on it. Let's go ahead and jump over to you for number 31.
Yeah, so I have the team that was 32 last week in this, the Texans. I know they did beat a good Jaguar team, and some people thought they might move up a little more. But I think that kind of was more about the Jaguars than it was about the Texans. The Texans do have a couple bright spots in Dameon Pierce. He's been running like crazy, which is awesome to see. And then Derek Stingley got his first interception of the season, which is always good to see. But as a whole, I think they're just a bottom team all around on offense and defense, and I think they'll still stay on here. I mean, they were bound to get a win eventually, and it happened to be against the Jaguars.
I will say I rewarded them more for the win than you did.
Yeah.
I actually had them at number 29. So there were two teams based on their performance last week and over the previous weeks that I felt went below them. And one of those teams at 30 is the Washington Commanders. They eked out a win in week 1 and then have just been dominated every single game since. They were at least in this game against the Titans, but then Carson Wentz did what Carson Wentz does, and he threw an interception in the end zone that sealed the victory for Tennessee. Not a lot to get excited. Now Ron Rivera is throwing his quarterback under the bus, saying the reason the other NFC teams who are, all have one or less losses is because of their quarterbacks. Okay, well, Daniel Jones is nobody's idea of an amazing quarterback. Cooper Rush, the backup, is playing in Dallas. Like, what are we talking about here? It's a mess in Washington. Wouldn't surprise me if Rivera's the next one gone.
Yeah, when the Commanders got Carson Wentz from the Colts. I could have told them that what kind of QB they could get. I mean, he has decent stats. If you look
so
at the
could
stats,
the Eagles. So could Eagles fans.
Yeah, if you look at the stats, it's looking all right. I mean, he's making some big plays, but you can tell by the decision making and he's letting him down in some of those games, and their rushing attack is not helping him at all. I mean, he's not getting any help. But Diami Brown and Jahan Dotson, I mean, they're looking pretty good. So I'm always a big fan of the bright spots with some of these teams that were kind of low on.
Silver lining in there.
Yeah, so just in case some of the fans are listening. Hey, we still love you a little bit.
Jahan Dotson, he's injured, but hey, nice rookie there. Brian Robinson coming back. They're your bright spots. Actually, here's one fun fact. I found out yesterday Washington actually leads all teams in QB pressures. It's crazy. They have that shows you just how bad their secondary is and the fact that they're not really able to finish and get those sacks, but they're actually, as a team, leading in the QB pressures. That's crazy. Why don't you give us
Chase Young?
29?
Yeah.
And without Chase Young, correct.
29, this team is not used to being down on the power rankings. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
I mean, they're 1-4. There's not much to be happy about. They've lost 4 straight games for the first time since 2013, I believe. Najee Harris has 290 yards combined. A lot of the things we were excited about coming into the season with Najee Harris and TJ Watt, that's kind of gone downhill. TJ Watt because of an injury, obviously. But when that stuff goes wrong, and then, I mean, a rookie QB, I don't think Kenny Pickett has been playing too bad. He was his first career start, and it was against the Buffalo Bills, so I'm not going to hold him too much against that, but I will hold the team as a whole against that. They just haven't been playing well, and until they start winning some games and showing that they can do something on the offensive side or the defensive side.
They've got one victory in week 1 against a division foe with the Bengals. They needed a long snapper replacement with a bad snap, missed extra point in order just to win that game, and they just lost 38-3. I had them below the Texans. You lose 38-3, and you've only won one game, and it was week 1, so I actually had them at 30. But hey, this is where we differ. Power rankings, they end up on our number 29. Number 28, I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry, Anthony. I can't believe in this team anymore, especially after that horrible showing this weekend. I had to put the Detroit Lions. Now, part of that, DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown played, but he was on a pitch count. But the one bright spot for this team was their offense, and they just got shut out and absolutely dominated by Bill Belichick and the Patriots. They got a bye week. They got plenty of time to get healthier, but I had no choice. I had to put them at 28 here.
Yeah, I was talking with Anthony about it before. It was just crazy to see the offense slip like that by so much. And now we're just kind of a lot of question marks with the Detroit Lions at this point because we knew their defense was bad, but we were like, hey, at least they have a good offense. And then they throw out a zero burger, which is not good, especially against the Patriots. Bill Belichick, he always has a pretty good defense. But when you score 0 points, you know that's pretty bad. So I had them at that same spot.
You mentioned Kenny Pickett, his first rookie start. Bailey Zappi, 6th rounder, comes in and has no trouble beating this Lions team. Yeah, hopefully they can get right in the bye week. Let's give number 27.
Yeah, I have the Chicago Bears. I know. I mean, they showed some fight against the Minnesota Vikings this past week. They kind of came up clutch, but that first half was awful. Kirk Cousins was throwing everywhere on him, and Justin Jefferson was catching everything on him. He had 91 yards in the first quarter. Montgomery played all right in the second half. Justin Fields had some big plays. But overall, I think this is a bottom-tier team, and they'll continue to show that throughout the season. Their passing attack is just I just don't know if they don't have any faith in him or they just can't draw plays for him. But they're rushing. I mean, they're 5th in rushing, so that's the bright spot I have.
Yeah, and I had them at 27, so we're aligned here. Their passing game, while not looking great, looked better this weekend than it had any of the previous weekends, so maybe that's a sign of things to come. Darnell Mooney finally got involved, so there's your bright spot, Chicago. You're ahead of the Lions. That's the one thing you have to hang on to. Let's go on to number 26. Who would have thought, with all the hype around Russell Wilson, that we would be putting the Broncos at 26, but alas, here we are. That absolutely abysmal Thursday night game where they lose to your Colts, who are nobody's idea of a juggernaut right now. Like I said, there's a bunch of teams jumbled at 2 and 3. I think there were 11 total, and I had to put the Broncos right near the bottom with the Bears as far as teams that have only won 2 games, and it was not very hard for me to put them there.
No, it wasn't hard, and that's saying a lot coming from what probably people had before this season. Russell Wilson only has 4 touchdowns through 5 games. That's the lowest he's had through 5 games ever. One season he had 19. So, I mean, this is just atrocious compared to what he's done in the past. I mean, usually he has a fall off in the second half of the season, I feel like. But right now it's just not looking good. And that was just an awful game to watch. And we can go ahead and put the Colts up next because I have them right above the Broncos.
That's exactly who I had. Yep.
Yeah, the Colts won. I mean, I think it was easy to put them above the Broncos because they just beat them. But I think that game could have gone any either way. I think the biggest thing for the Colts this week was defense and special teams. Defense made some big plays. Special teams made some huge plays, blocking a field goal. And then Chase McLaughlin's come in and had a pretty good kicking performance, which is very much needed when no touchdowns are scored and you're trying to get the win.
Stephon Gilmore. Yeah, right. You talk about an individual player coming and stepping up. The Colts were the better of the bad teams last Thursday. We got Bears and Commanders, two teams we've already listed in the bottom playing this Thursday. I guess it can't get much worse. Let's keep on rolling at number 24. I'm going to go ahead and put the Seattle Seahawks. There's definitely stuff to like on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense is still giving them trouble. They allowed a Saints team that has had offensive trouble all year long. They allowed Taysom Hill to score 4 touchdowns against them, 3 on the ground and 1 passing. As exciting as the whole Geno narrative is, and I'll be the first to tell you that I'm a believer in Geno now. I'm tired of doubting him. He is one of the most efficient quarterbacks now 5 weeks in, so you can't really call it a blip so much. He's, for whatever reason, working in that Shane Waldron Seattle Seahawks offense. So there are some stuff to get excited on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense is still one of the worst in the NFL. I've got him at 24.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Geno's been playing really well. If he was on a good team with those stats right now, he probably could be like an MVP candidate, but the Seahawks aren't going to win enough games for that to happen. Their defense is bad. They're last in yards allowed per play and second in points per game allowed. So, I mean, that's all you can really say. We've said that every week so far. Yeah, that's kind of what the Lions were before they threw up a zero burger. So, so for my next pick, this team might be better than what their record says, but I'm going off their record right now until they get a win. It's the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep.
They're 1-4, but I think they're a pretty good 1-4 team. But I couldn't put them any higher until they started.
Exactly where I had them. This is at 23, exactly where I had them.
I mean, Devontae Adams played really well. Max Crosby, before the Monday Night Football or the Week 5 recap, I mentioned Max Crosby, and he started getting a lot of pressures and stuff. And they played the Chiefs close, but I think in the back of our heads, we're like, the Chiefs are still going to win this game in some capacity. And that call to go for 2 at the end of the game was questionable. And I think the biggest question here is Josh McDaniels going to coach correctly and make the right decisions to win games? And is everything going to click for them to get a win eventually? Another win.
2 things on this. One, bright spot, Josh Jacobs. Talk about a career year. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. This is literally him having to bet on himself out of necessity, and he has looked like a top 5 running back these past 2 weeks. Raiders fans, before you get all angry in our mentions about this, we just lost to the Chiefs by 2, and we're going to end up putting the Chiefs very high. You know what? Win a game. All right? Beat somebody besides the Broncos, who are below you on these rankings. Number 22, I'm going to go ahead and put the Cleveland Browns. We're completely aligned on where we put the Raiders. I had a few do I put the Raiders above? You know what? The Browns have won 2 games. That's what it came down to. If they're going head to head, I might end up picking the Raiders, but I still, just for the fact that they've actually won 2 games and the fact that they were competitive with the Chargers this week, I put the Browns at 22. But they've actually surprisingly been bad on defense. Yes, they missed Myles Garrett 2 weeks ago because of the car wreck incident. But their defense in general, if you look at some of the advanced metrics, has just not been good. They've been bad against the run. They've been bad against the pass certain weeks as well. It kind of all came to fruition. They couldn't stop Justin Herbert or Austin Eckler, and that ultimately cost them a game. And of course, Jacoby Brissett still not able to pull out the win, and kicker issues with Cade York, being the hero in week 1, but missing a few others. So maybe it gets better later in the season when you have a different quarterback. But right now, 22 sounds right for Cleveland.
Right, and you pretty much said it. I had them a little higher, but you said everything I pretty much was going to say. But yeah, a lot of these teams around 2 and 3 and stuff, like you said at the beginning, they're tough to rank. But just one quick shout out to Nick Chubb. He's been playing really well, like a top back in the league. I put up a poll for Nick Chubb versus Saquon, and I think I got 1,000 votes, and it was 52% Nick Chubb, 48% Saquon. So it's very, very close, but people think Nick Chubb's the best in the league.
As far as pure runners, he's about as good as he gets. All right, let's move on to number 21.
All right, 21. I have the Atlanta Falcons. See, this is just where I don't know exactly what to make of this team, and it was unfortunate because they had a chance. they had a chance to win against the Buccaneers, except for that late roughing the passer call, which was the narrative for this entire week 5. Very unfortunate. And they had Pitts and Patterson out. So it's really hard to decide what the Falcons are. That's why I have them still kind of down in the dumps. But they played a close win, and then if they keep playing like that, they might have something to think about. But their passing game has been unfortunate. But Marcus Mariota has been, I think he's 3rd in rushing yards for QBs. So that's okay, but I mean, they just can't get the ball.
I was impressed with how the defense played against Tampa Bay, to be honest. Tampa Bay's offense hasn't been all that great this year, but I've been high on Atlanta's offense. I like the feistiness of this defense. They have nearly won every game. They almost came back and beat the Rams. They were winning until the fourth quarter against the Saints. This is a team that's competitive. I actually had them at 20. I had them ahead of the team that I'm going to put at 20, and that's the Cardinals. I just believe in this Falcons team a little bit more. Yes, the Cardinals played a little bit better, but I still don't. They're playing with a team without a plan. You know, if you come out every single game and you just get a big deficit early, to me that's poor coaching. That's poor planning. They're not getting these guys ready to play. Eventually, some of the talent, wins out. So Kyler Murray makes plays, Marquise Brown makes plays. But I just feel like this is a team without a plan. They'll get a boost when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Yes, they've won 2 games, which is why we have them at 20. But I'm not feeling great about the Cardinals. I actually had them below Atlanta.
Yeah, it's similar to the Raiders. They need to find some ways to get wins. I mean, they were close against the Philadelphia Eagles for this game, but I agree with you. They don't seem to have a plan. I mean, Marquise Brown is playing pretty well, but Kyler Murray, we talked about on Monday. He's high at some points and he's low at some points in terms of his playmaking. But yeah, I had them in the same spot.
Let's get one more pick from you. Let's get number 19 before we go to halftime.
All right, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're starting to fall down our rankings. They're 2-3 right now. Trevor Lawrence has 7 turnovers over the past couple games. And when you lose to the Texans, who we think is a pretty bad team, it's just all the questions get thrown up in the air on were we too high on the Jaguars? They did beat the Chargers 38-10. So that was big, but I think we just need to make our expectations more realistic, and I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah, when we start the second half, I'll talk about. I actually had them at 18. I had another team at 19, but I can easily see so many of these teams. Like I said, that was what took me the longest this week with the power rankings.
Yeah,
these 2 and 3 teams all jumbled together. Who do you put ahead of who? It's as I've mentioned on Twitter when I talk to some of you guys who have objections. It's not an exact science by any means. We're doing our best in this moment, this snapshot, this week 6 of the NFL to try to put these teams in some sort of order. Go ahead and tell you guys, as always, if you're not already subscribed, legitfootball.com. We give you the top 6 stories of the day, summarized, captioned, nice and easy. You can read in 5 minutes or less. We also give you a summary of all of the injuries that you need to know, so you can get that email every morning, get caught up on the NFL, and go about your day. It is 100% free, legitfootball.com. Hit join in your email address. Jimmy, let us know where to find you.
At NFL_stats. I've been posting stuff. DK Metcalf retweeted one of my tweets not too long ago. Pat McAfee quoted me, so you know.
Yeah.
Yep, McAfee, my boy. That. So you love to see stuff like that. So you know my stats and stuff are real, and everything I post is real. So go follow me like the other guys do.
Yeah, guys, if you are listening or watching for the first time, make sure to go ahead and subscribe. We do this Power Ranking show every Wednesday, but we're doing shows 5 days a week. Jimmy is on with me on Mondays. We do recaps for the week ahead or the week previous and Monday Night Football preview. Tuesdays, we do fantasy. This Thursday, we're doing a big show. Anthony, my producer, is finding out about this about the first time. We're starting a little bit earlier. It's going to be me and Pro Football Demon. We're starting at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, and we're going to go for an hour because we always get so many viewer questions on that day. So we're just going to talk. We're going to preview the week ahead. We're going to answer your questions, fantasy, start, sit, you name it. And then we're going to preview Thursday Night Football. That's with the Pro Football Demon. And then Friday, of course, I've got Tanner Kern on here with me to make game picks against the spread. So 5 days a week, guys. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure to tune in. And if you're here now, let us know in the chat how wrong we are with these rankings. We always hear about you guys on Twitter later. Nobody ever says anything during the Power Ranking show. Jimmy, are you ready to get through 1 through 18 in the second half here?
Let's do it. Let's see how many we can get.
Great. So let me go ahead and bring the screen back up. Anthony, if you want to go ahead and bring the timer, I'm just going to jump back in here. So I'm going to talk about that team that I did have at 19, who I'm now going to be putting in 18. That's the New Orleans Saints. I can see why you would put the Jags below them. The Saints coming off a victory, the Jags coming off a loss. this is very much a coin flip for any of you angry that like, oh, the Jags, blah, blah, blah. They destroyed the Colts and the Chargers. I get that, but you also have 2 losses in a row. You just lost to the team that was 32nd in our power rankings. Meanwhile, the Saints, they pulled out a victory. It's against the Seahawks, sure, but they made the plays when they needed to. Taysom Hill was absolutely the star of that game. Not really much defense on either side of the ball. So I would say Taysom Hill is the one bright spot. You found some offense. Maybe that was against the Seahawks defense. We'll have to see if they replicate that. Defense has not been as good as it has in years past. Still a lot of injuries. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Jameis Winston, Jarvis Landry. I mean, there's just a list of that. Do you have any silver linings for the Saints, or should we just move on?
Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill.
He's a pretty good silver. I mean, he's bound to have some of those games every year, and he had them. So hopefully you started him in fantasy, which I doubt anybody did.
Pretty sure no one did. All right, Let's move on to number 17, Jimmy.
I have the New England Patriots. I had them at 19. They ended up here because of how we do things, but they held the Lions to 0 points, which is always cool. Shout out Bill Belichick for coaching a well thought out game against that team, but. I think those, like I've always said every week, I think they'll stay in the middle of the pack. And Bailey Zappi was starting, which is always crazy to see them get a shutout with a third string quarterback. But I just don't have too much to say on this team other than shout out Bailey Zappi. And the Lions were letting up a lot of points and not getting any points.
Well, even as bad as the Lions defense is, I ranked them, my personal rankings, I had them at 17, because if you win to that degree with a 6th-round rookie quarterback, and not a lot of just standout talent players, that's a team that's playing well together. And Belichick is known for that, so maybe his team is gelling. So I had to give them a nice little boost. Number 16, my Miami Dolphins. Certainly a fall from grace from where they were 2 weeks ago. Part of this is due to the fact that they're having to rely on a third-string quarterback. It looks like it's already leaning towards Skylar Thompson. Tua has already been ruled out for week 6. They haven't ruled out Teddy, but Teddy Bridgewater, but he's still in concussion protocol. But the Dolphins defense looked a little listless. They just gave up 40 points to the New York Jets. Not much else to say here except for that things are actually looking good for Tyreek, who was in a walking boot at the end of this game. He actually practiced without the boot, so he's trending towards playing. You still have playmakers. Raheem Mostert looked great last week. Tua will come back eventually, hopefully. But yeah, playing the Vikings this week, not looking great for Miami. 16 sounds about right.
Yeah, I had them at 13. I just had them a little higher just because I thought all those injuries and stuff, it was hard to give them too much. I think
it's the Dolphins fan in me. I'm just like, no, knock them down. Get them to 16.
They've had 2 unfortunate losses straight. They're still 3-2, so we'll see if they can get some playmakers back and get started. But at this point, I don't blame you for putting them this low until they show us they can come back to what they were the first 3 weeks.
All right, we got about 11 and a half minutes left and 15 teams to get to. Let's go a little bit of speed round here. Who do you got at 15?
All right, I have the New York Jets. They put up a 40-point burger against your team. Breece Hall.
I had the Jets higher, I got to say. I'll talk about that in a second.
That's fair. Yeah, Breece Hall had over 100 yards. Their young playmakers are playing well. I'm just kind of waiting to see if they can do more. But they scored 40 points for the first time since 2018, so that's awesome.
I had them at 13 ahead of some of these next 2 teams that we'll mention. But you know what? They really get a chance to prove it. They get to play the Packers this week. You beat the Packers, both Jimmy and I will probably have the Jets in the top 10 next week. I'm going to move on to number 14. How about the defending Super Bowl champs, LA Rams? I actually had them below the Jets because this team has problems. And the defense has not been as dominant as... Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. But this offensive line is actually one of the worst in the NFL. They're very one-dimensional on offense. It's basically Cooper Kupp with a little bit of Tyler Higbee thrown in, and that's it. No running game. Allen Robinson has not been anything that we thought he would be in the preseason. This LA team has real problems. They just lost decisively to the Cowboys. Let's keep on rolling. Unless you have quick thoughts on the Rams, let's go to 13.
The Rams' offensive line is bad. They're last in rushing yards. That's not going to help your offense. For my next pick, I have the Titans. They had a close win against the Commanders. I think they just go back and forth, and I go back and forth on this team on how good they are, but they still lead the AFC South. They still have some playmakers on offense and defense. Derrick Henry's playing well. That's why they're still this high for me. But I had to put them higher. They've powerhouse in the top 10.
They've won 3 in a row. I had them at 11.
11?
Because I just feel like this team is on a roll, and they're another team that's playing above the sum of their parts. And at some point, these teams that may be more roster talent deficient, if they keep winning games, and we'll talk about the New York Giants, shout out, I'm sure they'll be interested to see where we put them. But eventually we just got to say, okay, these guys, they're winning. They're finding ways to win. The Titans have won 3 in a row. I had them at 11 ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals, who I'm going to have to put at 12 here. I know they had won 2 in a row, but hey, you got to find a way to win that game against the Ravens. The Ravens secondary that has been kind of one of the worst in the NFL really was able to limit this Bengals offense. They're still not able to run the ball very well. Offensive line still having issues protecting Joe Burrow. And they only put up 17 points against the Ravens. Like, that's problematic. I know it's an AFC North matchup, but yeah, Bengals at 12.
Yep, that makes sense. And all of their losses have come on game-winning field goals, which is crazy to think about. So I think they still have a lot of potential to come back to what they were last year.
But that's also like, at what point do we say, okay, they're having trouble closing out games?
Right.
This is what I mean. Too. Like, you get enough data and you have to start asking, like, they could have almost won these games, but if it keeps happening, that becomes, a symptom of the team and their success going forward.
Right. They've been close, but they've been close a lot of times and they still lose. So that makes sense. All right. So for my next pick, I have the Chargers. They won against the Browns. It was a close game against them, but their second passing yards this season, their defense has allowed the third most points per game. That might be because of, that is because of injuries, a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. But their offense is clicking. That's why they're still this high. Mike Williams is playing well with Keenan Allen out. Austin Eckler just seems to like a touchdown machine lately. So hopefully you have him in fantasy football. So yeah, that's it for the Chargers.
I had the Chargers at 10.
Yeah.
I've actually starting to see reports that this team is not all bought in on Brandon Staley. If you saw the Keenan Allen tweets where he was like, WTF are we doing, when they were going for it with the lead, 4th and 2 at like their own 45 or something, and it's like, okay, when your star players are starting to question you live during the game on Twitter, that is a problem. And it would start to explain, this team looks so good on paper, and yes, I know they've had injuries, but they've kind of haven't played up to their potential even when they were fully healthy. Maybe it is they're not all buying to that philosophy. So I'm starting to be a little bit more down on the Chargers. I was more down on the Packers, who I'm now going to have to put at 10. I had them at 12. Yeah. They're another team with a lot of issues. Their defense is not as good as it looks on paper. They had to take the Patriots with Bailey Zappi into overtime to win that game, and they ended up losing and letting up a big lead to the Giants in London. So they really don't have much of a passing game, certainly not a downfield passing game. Like I said, their defense hasn't been as good, especially against the run. Saquon Barkley was clearly the hero in that game, and those are problems that are going to come up as issues as they face tougher opponents down the road. But hey, they still make it in our top 10.
Right, and we'll keep seeing which team we see, if it's the first half Packers that we saw in London or if it's the second half Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers is still amazing, and I think they can utilize A.J. Dillon, and if they use them a little more correctly, like Aaron Jones as well, I think they could still be pretty good on offense and make smart decisions on defense.
By the way, I just want to quickly say it's nice to see us changing it up. We're not so aligned at this spot. We actually have multiple, but that's what makes this exercise so fun. So let's keep it rolling. We got 9 spots left to go. Who do you have at 9?
So this is a team I had very low, and I got some beef on. It's the New York Giants. I have at 9, the team that just beat the Green Bay Packers. Some people might have them higher. I think this is a good spot for them. They're finding ways to win. They're coached very well. Saquon Barkley's playing like one of the best running backs in the league. Daniel Jones, he's running the ball well, throwing the ball well, despite not having a lot of weapons on offense. Their defense held Aaron Rodgers to not a lot of points in the second half. They've only allowed 91 completions so far this season, which is the fewest in the NFL. They also only have 1 interception. So imagine if they do start getting more takeaways this season. So a lot to love about the Giants. They're 4-1. They're up there with the NFC Beast.
I just want to say, be on the record, that I had the Giants at 6. To me, they've won 4 out of 5 games, losing only to the team that is going to be ranked higher than them in Dallas. Forget what it looks like on paper. This team is finding ways to win games. They just beat the Packers in London, so I had them at 6. Just so, because I know we're going to get roasted about the Giants again. We do every week. Let's move on to number 8. I'm going to go ahead and I had the Giants ahead of this team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just look listless. They're finding ways to win games, but they're 3-2. They had lost 2 in a row. who knows if that Grady Jarrett call isn't called, if the Falcons don't come back and win this game. And so, yes, they're still in first in their division now, winning that game, but just not a lot to get excited about. The defense got torched 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, so even that hasn't been, as strong as it has in the past. But, I mean, hey, they're still top 8, 3-2. They still got Tom Brady. I'm sure they'll win their division and go to the playoffs and make a run.
Right, yeah, they're finding ways to win games, and I think Tom Brady just gets better throughout the season. And they have a lot of weapons on offense, a lot of weapons on defense. Their rushing attack has been kind of lackluster. They're second to last in rushing yards so far this season. But I like them. I mean, they're going to be a powerhouse this season, and they could easily make a run in the playoffs, I feel. For my next pick, I have the 49ers at 7. I think their defense is outstanding. I think they're number 1 in sacks. They haven't allowed 20. They're one of 2 teams, which we haven't named another second team yet, but they haven't allowed 20 points in a game. They had a great win against a bad Panthers team. Got Matt Rule fired. Jimmy Garoppolo's playing well. I mean, this is a 49ers team we've seen in the past make runs in the playoffs, and I feel like they could do that this season.
Agreed. There's a lot to like. They just need Garoppolo to be efficient. They just need that offense to be efficient. They don't need it to be gangbusters. That defense is so good. The running game is really getting going, which Shanahan loves. A lot to like about this Niners team, setting up nicely for them to really take control of the NFC West. I'll go ahead and put the Baltimore Ravens at number 6. I had them at 7 in my personal rankings, so kind of the same thing. Like I said, the big difference there was I actually put the Giants ahead of them just because, man, I just want to reward the Giants for going 4-1. But at the end of the day, Baltimore lost to the Bills and the Dolphins in a superhuman effort. They beat the Bengals, last year's AFC representative in the Super Bowl. Justin Tucker is still as automatic as it gets in the NFL. And Lamar, even when he's off, they find ways to win. So a lot to like about Baltimore. Clearly now a favorite in the AFC North going forward.
Right. They've had some hiccups towards the ends of some games. So we'll see if that keeps going or if we'll see the team that got the close win against the Bengals. But, I mean, when you have Lamar, you're going to be a top team in the NFL.
You're going to be in every game.
Around. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Easily.
2.5 minutes with 5 spots left. Start us off at number 5, Jimmy.
All right, number 5, I had them at 6, but the Minnesota Vikings, they are one of the 4-1 teams. I just don't think they're better than any of the teams that we have above them right now. Jefferson, Cook, Kirk Cousins played well. The defense is pretty good. Darius Smith, Harrison Smith. I mean, they're, like you said last week, they're winning games. They're 4-1. It's exciting. I'm excited to see where this team goes, and if they keep going up, keep going down. But Dolphins next week.
This is another team that is, they're not short of the week 1 game against the Packers. They're not looking gangbusters. They're not just like, wow, this Viking teams look great. But at the end of the day, they're 4-1. Like the Giants, they're finding ways to win, and you have to start giving those teams credits. I also had them in my personal rankings at 5. Moving on to number 4, Dallas Cowboys. This is a team I picked to not make the playoffs in the preseason. I just thought they had too many losses, and especially after week 1, it looked like they were going that way. But hats off to the defense, especially Dan Quinn. That defense is one of right up there with the Eagles, and the 49ers is one of the best defenses in the NFL. Micah Parsons is otherworldly. Number 4, big matchup against the Eagles this week. We should see the rankings shift after that. Looking forward to Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, we have some great games coming up this week with the Cowboys playing the Eagles, and then we have the Chiefs playing the Bills, and I have the Chiefs next on this list.
Yep.
I mean, the Chiefs, what's to say about the Chiefs that we haven't already? They're a top 3 team in the NFL based off our power rankings, and they're always going to be a top 3 team in the NFL with Patrick Mahomes. He always finds a way to get his offense involved.
Well, you said it when you were mentioning the Raiders game. You said it best, and it's like, and I felt the same way. Down 17-0, I'm like, the Chiefs are going to come back. Like, I didn't doubt it.
Right, and Travis Kelce, 4 touchdowns, first tight end to do that since 1985, which is amazing. I mean, it doesn't matter. Someone's going to get involved in the offense, and when you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce clicking, that's just going to be a beautiful thing. And then the defense is good enough to keep them in games as well. So, all
right, we'll probably need a minute of overtime, Anthony. Just giving you a warning here, because here's the big thing. Here's the big debate. The Eagles are undefeated. They're the only undefeated team. They got a challenge in Arizona. They should have won by more, but they still found a way to win. They found a way to grind it out at the end of the game, kick the game-winning field goal. The Bills looked unbeatable against the Steelers. A Mike Tomlin-led Steelers team. They win 38-3. Which way do we go? I'm actually going to be the deciding factor by default by picking number 2. Give us 1 minute, Anthony, for overtime here. I know that the Bills are probably the best team in the NFL. I know that they're still the Super Bowl favorites. They're still my Super Bowl favorites, but I cannot knock a team for being undefeated. So I have to put the Bills at number 2. Curious to see if you disagree with me on your personal side, but man, they just looked unstoppable on both sides of the ball. I know the Steelers have their issues, but these are still professional football teams, and to beat a Mike Tomlin-led Steelers team 38-3, that was so impressive. But at the end of the day, Eagles are undefeated. I had to personally keep them at 1.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, 4 touchdowns for Allen in the first half. He could have broken the passing yard record if they kept going. He had like 370 yards or something like that in the first half, which was amazing. But yeah, I had the same top 2 as you. I think, you can't go against the Eagles for winning. I mean, the NFL put up teams against them, and they're knocking them down. So until something changes, we have to keep them at 1 until we see further notice. And I think this week will be a big one to see.
I mean, look at this. You mentioned it before, but you've gotten 1 versus 4, Eagles versus Cowboys, 2 versus 3, Bills versus Chiefs. We're going to know definitively who's, a lot of these, the Jets and the Packers have a key matchup. Just let the games play out. These things always work themselves out. You're still going to get angry at us because that's what you do. We will release this graphic on Twitter as soon as it's ready. Golddeck16 usually has it ready right away, so shout out to him again for doing our awesome graphic every week for our power rankings. And let us know. We like the disagreements. We want to know. It's not an exact science. We want to know where you think your team is. Where were we wrong? Feel free to let us know when we're right, too. We don't really hear that often. Thank you, Jimmy, as always, for doing this with me. We will see you next week. Jimmy will not be on the Monday show, but we will have him, of course, back for the Wednesday Power Ranking show. Any last words before we sign off? Or are you just excited to get Week 6 started?
I'm so excited to see the Commanders and Bears play each other tomorrow. I think it could be a shootout.
It can't be worse. It can't be worse than last week.
Don't say that. You just jinxed it.
I hope I didn't.
But I'll be watching. So
make sure to tune in. As I mentioned, tomorrow, Pro Football Demon, we're going to start early. We're going to start at 7 Eastern, and we're going to go for an hour. We've never done that before. It might be the only time we do that if we're twiddling our thumbs and people aren't asking us questions, but we always have too many questions to answer, so we're going to try doing an hour. Call it the 30 Minutes of Football Big Show. If that works, we'll do it every week. So if you want to watch live...
Of football.
Double.
30 minutes double. The name. I don't know.
What is it? Double header. 30 minutes of football double header. That's probably what I'll call it.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Guys, thank you as always for listening or watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already. Tune in tomorrow for that big show, and let us know what you think on Twitter about our power rankings. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. We'll see you tomorrow. That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.